to a great start here. We've had some great panel sessions already. We've had some of the exhibitors are out there showing their wares, and it really is an opportunity for us all to get together. It's been very interesting to sit in and listen to some of the sidebar discussions that are going on. It's really been a great exchange, and that's going to continue throughout the rest of the week. We had some insights that were provided earlier this morning by the gentleman that we're going to bring up here, and I think it's very timely when you look at the budget issues that the budget's gone to the Hill. And so we'll have an opportunity to talk about that in just a second here. But I'd like to introduce Vice Admiral Joe Mulloy. Joe's got an extensive background in submarines, having had different assignments on the Trepang, the Miami, the Puffer. He was the CO of the San Juan. He was also the commander of Sub-Squadron 15 out in Guam, and several other operational related tours. But I think the thing that makes him the man of the day or the man of the hour for the Navy at this point in time is the extensive background that he's got dealing in the financial and the resources business in the Navy. Right now he is the N8, as I think you all, or many of you are very familiar. He's head of the integration, capabilities and resources section in the Navy. But he's had a great background, both the operational time he spent with the Navy, as well as the time he spent on the Joint Staff and the Navy staffs to lead him up to this position. So I can't think of anyone who is better qualified to talk about resources, requirements, and the capabilities that the Navy needs going forward than Admiral Joe Mulloy. So Joe, would you come up here and turn on your magic?
Thank you, Admiral General. Thank you very much. Let me put these out of the way here. Well, thank you, General. I appreciate your kind invitation. Admiral Takai, Admiral Mackey, Admiral Daly, and many other distinguished guests, and to our enlisted outstanding performers, congratulations again to all of you. We're very proud of you. Well, I come from D.C. with greetings, and I think more likely the greetings were for me when I landed in San Diego. I have loved this town for a long, long time, and it warms my heart to come back again. As a matter of fact, I was so excited to see it again. It reminded me when I was an XO back here in the early 90s over in Point Loma. We lived up in UTC, and my oldest son was a little guy, 1 to 3 years old then, and he loved going to SeaWorld. My wife got passes in the area multiple times. She was able to bring him a couple times a week, and he was so excited to see all the animals, the life. He loved the beach, the time here. And we came back about a year and a half after I transferred to visit some friends, and we landed at Lindbergh Field, and we came around on Rosecrans and got on I-5. And when he saw the tower of the SeaWorld Tower, all of a sudden his little legs started going, I'm back, I'm back, I'm back. He knew he was back here in San Diego. And so it just warms my heart to be back here again, and to think about the transitions in life. When I think about that little kid at 4 then, and now he is 24, he's an ensign at EOD school down there, and he's going to be explosive ordnance officer in about another 6 or 7 months of being a unit. But the same people that right now, one of his best friends from Naval Academy, Gina Grabowski, is an ensign on the Princeton, and his roommate from Naval Academy, Andrew Roach, is right down the road here in Coronado. He is almost done with his SEAL training, beginning his PIN in another couple months. This is our future. This town has been a long-time Navy town, but you think about the future of our country, and I'm so excited to see them be excited, grab the reins, and move ahead. It's important, all of us, corporations, the Institute, and those of us still in uniform, think about the talents these people bring, the drive they have, the resources we can give them to make sure they can help us move on. And the CNO is going to challenge all of them and all of us in terms of innovation, and we'll talk about that. I know your conference is how to make the strategy work, and my idea tonight is how we're going to talk about how to finance that strategy. I will tell you is the Navy in this PB-17 on the Hill is we can maintain our maritime superiority in a dynamic security environment. We can strengthen naval power by focused investments. We can continue to have to make hard choices, and I'll talk about that, because it is difficult. The money is not unlimited. We certainly live in a Budget Control Act world, and we have to emphasize innovation and reform. Next slide. So, the world we live in is the most challenging and turbulent since World War II. I think back on when I was out here before, the Soviet Union still existed. We were going on special operations and looking around, and shortly as my tour went on and when it ended, that all imploded. Well, unfortunately, a guy named Putin is, in the words of the Blues Brothers, putting the band back together. And that's not necessarily a very good thing. We sometimes are in a world where the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but it's very confusing when Iran and Russia are teaming up and thinking about what they're doing about ISIS, but are they really doing it, or are they bombing people we're supporting? I mentioned at breakfast that I really need Admiral Stavridis to advise me because I don't understand the politics of all around the world. I just know we have to resource our forces to be able to defend America around the world from the highest end of the nuclear power area, where Russia and China are both building and testing and have built their Ohio replacement programs. They have built their D6 missile system, and they are out operating. Two different levels of technology, but the drive is there. North Korea is putting together a ballistic missile submarine, kind of like the Gorée. It's kind of a throwback to those of us who remember a golf class with a missile in the sail. But everyone's pursuing technology. Everyone's pursuing the spread of it. And that really brings tremendous risk and danger, but opportunities to us. And we have to be able to think about what do we bring forward. Clearly, Iran is advanced missiles, cyber threats. What do they challenge and what's going on? They are an actor of malevolent discord in the Middle East. And whatever they're up to is generally not good, and it's very difficult to keep track on. And it's a turbulent overlay of religion, but also mistrust. It is interesting to me that they are somehow breeding with and allowing the Russians to overfly their territory. When you read back about the development of the Iranian country and all that, the tremendous mistrust existed really with the Russians and their border. Tremendous mistrust, tremendous dislike for each other, that they're able to paper over something from the 60s and 70s when they absolutely hated each other to now paper this thing together. So it's complex to understand, and I think it's incumbent upon our leaders to keep looking at the world, but it's incumbent upon all of us to resource our sailors, talk to Congress, and get the money in our Marines so that we can go forward in this world and be prepared to deal with, are the Russians going to sell a Bastion cruise missile system, high-speed, dangerous weapon system that has tremendous range, far more than they need in that area, but a tremendous threat to our ships and our Marines going from that area. So that's one step. These countries are up, these four countries and that one group are the leading terms of where we have to be. Next slide. The world continues to move on. Admiral Richardson likes this display. Admiral Greenert used to put one up showing, he called them the bow ties and the channels of the world and where they're at. Admiral Richardson kind of looks down on this one as, this is the evolving world. It's intercommunicated. There's accelerating change. It's a maritime system. There's a global information grid. And when I talked at breakfast, I said, if you went back hundreds of years ago, you could have laid a chart from this world view, and probably a lot of it would look the same, except back then they wouldn't realize there were photons on those yellow lines. People back then would realize it's ships, because you look back on it. You look in the Middle East, from India to the Persian Gulf. When I was in India back in 2009, speaking of the PAC fleet at a conference out there for the creation of the ions, I learned more about Mumbai, about the sheer amount of sailing that in the interconnection between the Indian Empire, or whatever, I can't remember what it's called, it was a Mumbai Empire, to the Persian Gulf, the sheer amount of trading that went on. You look in the Mediterranean, that would have been a Phoenician map before the Romans then built the Navy. Obviously, the world grid is what shipbuilding would have been the Royal Navy and our Navy. So it's a connection out there, but now we're even connected at the speed of light. At the same time, there are some groups threatening all those particular lines out there, and there's one particular country out there that threatens that. So we have to be able to live in this world. We have to be able to have the correct cyber forces to ensure, because those connections are landfall points, and they're not require a missile or ship to be a landfall. Those of you who do Tomahawk missiles know a landfall waypoint, right? Well, Jantai deals with thousands of landfall waypoints every microsecond. Right now are those cables out there going to our countries and our allies, and they're either a source of importance and connections and items I'll talk about later on with our financial reserve system and what's going on, but they're also a source of potential infection to ourselves. We have built an elaborate system of trust that existed in the internet that now is being mistrusted and misused. We have to go back and redesign and build our control points, and we'll talk more about that. How do we operate in a world of what was supposed to be trustworthy is now untrustworthy, but our systems don't operate necessarily that way. And it's incumbent upon Jan and Hert's fantastic team and people you'll hear about this week is to be able to think about all those landfall waypoints where we build a Navy to defend and keep it at a distance. She has to operate in that full spectrum from at the coastline, from a cyber connection, actually into our factories, our bases, and our buildings that all go back to other countries, that where they operate from and where they can anonymously connect themselves. Using this grid of speed of light, they can grid themselves around the world. Next slide. Hey, this wouldn't be a Joe Mulloy brief without a graph. There will not be any quizzes or tests. But I will tell you, as you look at that orange line, the sawtooth one, I'll call that what's called enacted. Enacted is a technical finance term, as that's what Congress actually gave us for money. That includes OCO and base. And you can see it looks like kind of a wave, an up, down, up, down. On the left-hand side of that was, the first year was sequestration. We lost a lot of money. The second year in 14, there was a 2-year BBA, 14-15. It went up and it went back down again. We never got well, and in those 3 years, we lost $25 billion of the base in the Navy. We are still trying to deal with that. We're still taking care of our ships. We couldn't buy everything we wanted. We had to delay a lot of research and development. We probably lost, in those 3 years, about a year or two of interim operational capability, IOCs. In other words, we slid, the Russia and China didn't slide, or they moved ahead. That's a real concern of the world we live in. Now you see this, 16, the year we're in, there's this big giant spike up. I told the CNO, the outgoing one and then the incoming one, is that Congress will keep their eye on what we can. You will not end up down in 16. In fact, we ended up in base budget about $1.5 billion over, and you added about $6 billion of OCO. We are actually better off than we expected in 16. But that's also against an eroding tide. That's trying to tell someone, hey, I'm sorry your basement's flooded, but I gave you a brand new pump, okay? It's great idea, it's going to help a little bit, but is it going to be pumped fast enough for the next tide coming in? Because you see 17, Admiral Daly asked this morning, 17 goes rocketing back down. Now, we have an option coming up. I know Congress will look at that one. The President has done what they can on that one. OMB has. We have some real loss out there with that $4.6 billion, some credible things. It's going to impact us in terms of our other procurement Navy. What are we going to have in terms of buying the Kane systems, buying smaller other items we want to have? Research and development, about a 4% cut across the board. Once again, it's another month or two, but every month of delay of weapon systems means we're further behind people developing hypersonic weapons, developing other items that threaten us and our way of life. So it's a real concern of what happens in 17. But as I look at the next 4 years after that, we're going to have, I believe, 2 more BBAs, because I don't think anything in this country will drive us to lift this budget control law, and it ends in 21. So you're going to have an 18 and a 19, a 20 and a 21, with a spike again. What's our net effect? I've done a couple different regression analysis. I think we're going to have between 87 and 94% of our money each year. That's a good thing, except I really need 100% of my money, and that doesn't even make up for what I'm short out there. For all the chiefs that are wishing I had another part. This year in 17, you're going to have 90% of your OPTAR, not 100%. So every chief in here, every first-class petty officer, you better watch your spares closely, because you're not going to have all the OPTAR you want on that boat. I'm asking you all to toe a line, hang on, look carefully at what you're spending on. And we've done a good job at that. But it gets hard to keep rubbing nickels to get, out there. It's talked about the old joke about you rub a nickel so hard, make the buffalo squeak. Every chief in the Navy is doing a lot of buffalo squeaking, and we need you guys to keep doing that, because that's what's going to happen to us. It is going to be tough living in that world out there. It has been exhausting dealing with this strategy. I will tell you, all of your finance people, the finance people in the companies, it is difficult to predict with a world like that. That leads me to some of the hard choices. That X graph up and down leads right into the whole cruiser discussion. I'll talk more about that later on. But the bottom line is, I have a critical asset I want to have. I need to hold it well past the timeline of this law ending. But how do I hold on to a cruiser when my money keeps going up and down? Perhaps maybe it's the Navy's phase modernization plan that says I'll take the manpower and the O&M off of it. I'll put it in layup, essentially a phase modernization period, and bring the ship back later when I have more stability. Because I can't keep everything in the Navy in an unstable world at the same level we want to be. I need to have the combat forces forward, but I also want to have some things later on. So that's why we deal with those difficult choices out there. Next slide. The CNO will be out here later in the week. I think he'll be excited to meet a group, especially when he sees all the bright people in this room and the potential, as we see out in the room out there, of where companies and our sailors are thinking about where it can go. I've told the CNO he needs to operate up at the high level. We'll keep working the money at my level and working with Congress and with OSD and OMB. But the bottom line, when he lays out his 4 lines of effort, is enhancing power, strengthen our Navy team, high velocity learning. He is basically, and what I've got from his discussions with me is, he is challenging everyone in this group that works, our contractors, but primarily our sailors, our officers, our Marines, is to think about, how can I do my job better? What can I do to make my part of my career better, my ship, my command, and everything else? So you think back on it. For an E3 storekeeper, what do you have to do? You have to be able to do your job, take care of those spares, write the paperwork properly, process it, don't lose things, get those DLRs done, get the money back for your command. For an E6 mechanic, I have to be able to, a quick repair, not break anything, break the right spare out, and then come up with another idea. How can I make it faster? The old Benny Sugg idea. Those still exist out there. We need that innovation. For a junior officer, where can I do my training better? How can I do it faster? An EOD team, what do I have to do to be efficient and effective when I travel somewhere? The challenge is out there, and I think he's going to challenge everyone to do your job better. And he's got a remarkable way of delivering this message in a positive way. He will make you feel good about working hard. And that's really important to do. And it really resonates with me. He will challenge you the right way to move ahead and think about how you can be a better sailor, what you can do, how you can help the Navy. And we need it. As you think about that orange line, trying to ride that one, we are in a whipsaw. And anyone who's ever operated something at the end of being jerked around, you have to be able to hang on, you have to be able to be smart and keep your footing. He's also laid out his Navy strategic plan on the right. We will take care of that strategic deterrent. We need to build that because, once again, I will call them not necessarily adversaries, but our challenges out there, they have already built their follow-on SSBN. They have already built follow-on missiles. We are starting to build ours. It will be an amazing submarine, but as a significantly expensive submarine, it will take up a fair amount of our dollars going ahead, and therefore our lobbying Congress, and actually we got some help from the President in 21 to help pay for that first part of the first boat, but it's only a down payment. But we need to be able to take care of that because the Navy will eventually, by the end of this 5-year plan, be 70% of all nuclear warheads accountable to the President and deployable on a daily basis will be on submarines. And they'll be guarded by Marines at SWIFT-LANT and SWIFT-PAC. We need to be a team effort and take care of that. And our cyber command will be part of that nuclear command and control, the NC3 world out there that needs to be operate reliably. We have to maintain that whole spectrum of items. We have to provide timely options to leadership. We need to have initiatives from the blue water to littorals. So I'm certain he'll talk again about it, but he means every word of it. And I think he'll challenge you in a positive way. Next slide. So what did we get out of this budget when we deal with all that money and that whipsaw? Like I said, we had some hard challenges. I'll talk about that. We also laid in, first off, on people, full spectrum challenges of Sailor 2025. We want to be able to take care of people that have their retirement plans, their school, what they're having for leave, maternity leave. We need to work retention of all personnel, especially our women officers and petty officers. We need to be the best force we can. We have, modern day and updated the Command Advancement Program. These are all stitched together when you talk to Admiral Moran about how do we take care of our people. We need to have each one of them excel, and that goes back to the CNO's challenge. When you're satisfied and you're helping the Navy, you can move on to that next thing as well. Ready, relevant learning. This will be, that part of that was how do I train people to be engaged and smart. I was over the LCS trainers before I came back for lunchtime, and it's a whole new world of training and thinking about it, about getting people to walk and run, use electron. In the past was kind of a bogus, computer-based training, A, B, B. You're not really learning anything. This is an amazing ability to put together what real panels look like, real things move, and you can do it in a safe environment. Then you prepare ahead for the next level of training and you prepare to go to sea. To develop more of that so that people get the training they need at the right time. And it will actually end up saving the Navy money because I don't have to have 1 million people waiting to go to school. When I was a junior officer or department head, I would get a sonar technician on board. He would already have been in the Navy 2 years by the time he came to me. 2 years of sitting at submarine school, he could become a Charlie School graduate and a super tech, they called him, on the BQQ-5. He was still an E4 or maybe as a push-button E5, no dolphins. He comes on board, he's supposed to be a super tech. Well, it's going to be a while before he can be super teching on a sonar system because he's got to learn how to stand watch on it. He's got to learn how to love, live, and live on a boat with his shipmates. This system's going to go to his, people will get trained, they'll go to a ship, they'll go back to school, try to close loop that to make people move ahead. It'll save money, but I think it'll actually make people more aware of their surroundings and better operators. Our submarine surface area, significant investment. We talked about our replacement. Virginia payload module. And embedded in that was a $600 million addition by OSD to be able to do advanced acoustic superiority upgrades on those boats. All those submarines will deliver with advanced. So significant upgrades. And then UUVs. There's a picture of the North Dakota before she went on deployment with commercial UUVs on board. That ship went to the Mediterranean before their PSA actually deployed with divers and those UUVs on a mission in hostile waters operating those. First ever from a submarine done with commercial vehicles right away on a deployment. It's a step ahead. Once again, we talked over the summer. The Navy did not have all this money when we balanced this budget. We came down to OSD in June and said, this is a Navy we can buy. This is a Navy we need to move ahead. And we laid out all the things that should have been bought. And then in the end, OSD and OMB realized was, hey, the Navy is important. And how did they square that circle? I'll be honest with you. It's the U.S. economy doing well, and it's all because of the people in this room maintaining our country safe, and people realize they can invest, they can move ahead. The world looks to us, that have freed up over $21 billion in future inflation and expenditures across the Department of Defense. That money was harvested, presented back to OMB, back to the Department of Defense, and that was laid in. Each service got some of it. And everything we had on our list of items that we said if we had the money we would have bought would have been weapon systems, would have been the Ohio replacement, would have been the acoustic superiority, and I'll keep going on those. But all that money came from areas that were a couple hard choices we made, inflation savings across the FIDP. That's why it's important. We need to keep the economy going. We need to keep the country safe because all those dollars are frangible. That we might lose them in the future, but we have them now. And the president bought that chunk of the Ohio replacement in 21. That's how we squared that circle. Was the fantastic work of the fleet, and in the Pentagon, we could take it back that day in, day out. When Third Fleet, Land Fleet certified ships, they go forward. Well, you know what? Later on, the Secretary of Defense walks on an aircraft carrier with the President of Malaysia in the South China Sea, and all of a sudden he realizes, Navy posture is important. These ships are important. What it means to the world is important because he sees it up forward, and it comes from the people in this room that deploy those ships. That squares that circle with him that I want to have a Navy. I need a Navy that can do that. I need a Navy that can operate with our Japanese allies and put a foot down in the East China Sea and South China Sea. They can operate in the Mediterranean and be able to make the Russians stand up and take notice. They can operate in the North Atlantic and have the Russians take up and stand notice and work with our British friends. Significant investments in aviation. The last 3 years of my job has been cutting aviation weapons and shore commands to be able to balance the Navy through those tough times. There's a time where we said we need more. So we ended up with 13 more Joint Strike Fighters. We ended up with 16 more Hornets. Ended up with, Congress bought us 7 more Growlers. And then we had 3 others from another contract deal. And we're going to move out with this refueling unmanned air vehicle. The CNO wants to get unmanned in the air wing. It will free up 5 or 6 fighters a day. And a little vignette was, if we had this RAQ-25 a year ago when the Roosevelt was tracking an Iranian ship going down the coast. It was going to deliver weapons to Yemen, in the middle of a country that's falling apart anyway. The Iranians, up to their skullduggery, were sending weapons down the coast. We spent a lot of time and money flying F-18s, tracking a couple of ships going down the coast. If we had one of these vehicles, we could have had 13 hours a day in a rotation, continuous eyeballs on it. It could have been tanking the F-18s flying, and we'd not have spent a fortune burning out F-18s. This is something we need now as fast as we can get it in the fleet and have that integrated on aircraft carriers to give us surveillance at a distance and mission tanking on our squadron. And that money also came through here. Our surface fleet, tremendous innovations. We are now in FY16 about the contract for our first Flight 3. They'll have a radar, the Advanced Missile Defense Radar, with 30 times the sensitivity of a Spy-1, the Spy-6. It'll be amazing in terms of what we can do to integrate that together. Our ESBs are operating and they're building they're PSAing one and about to start building the third one right down the road down here. An amazing ship. The Marines and Special Forces are looking forward to operating on it. Our TOX, waiting for a contract to come out here. I mean, HII and BA and NASCO have submitted bids already. We're waiting for that selection. That'll be an important oiler. And then our LHA, the next big deck amphib, will be also part of that same contract. Those last 2 are bounded together here. See here. So next slide. So where else the capabilities come in? Weapons. We could not buy every weapon we want. Weapons can be built rapidly by America, but we did buy the critical R&D, and we bought some quantities back. The SM-6, which Secretary of Defense was out here a week and a half ago and talked about. An amazing capability. I think he had even a video to show you what happened to the hulk of a poor frigate, how it was absolutely gutted on the inside. LRASM to strike at distance, leading to OSUW. High velocity projectile. That's can go from a regular from all of our 106 barrels in our DDG fleet, and can also go from a electromagnetic railgun. Give us greater range and the ability to shoot down incoming missiles because it'll have interferometer head on the front of it, can actually track and shoot things down. And then maritime TACTOM was tested, and that OSD just laid in over $300 million of another item we wanted to have to build weapons by the end of the week to make our TACTOMs even more relevant to the future. In depot maintenance, we have funded the aviation, ship, and weapon maintenance we need to have. Ship depot maintenance is an expensive product. We're going to put $8 billion in FY16 into ship maintenance. When I started this job a few years ago, we were looking at about $6 billion. No one can say we are not putting the money into our ships. They have had a hard life. We work them very hard. We will take care of them. But the challenge to our shipbuilding industry and to our surf maps and SWRMX is, what do we have to do to take care of the ship? What will keep it through life? But we can't just throw everything at a ship right away. We have to be able to open a ship, have a better estimate of its condition, and then fix what has to be fixed and cycle some jobs the next time. Right now, we just go in and say, hey, I'm going to do a $500 million overrun on ship maintenance because I'll get the money. Well, the days of rounding up that kind of money are hard. We need to use the dollars wisely, but we will come up with that money. Those hard choices. We took a 4% cut in all other procurement and RDT&E. That's a difficult choice. The companies out here, you'll see that when come on contract, is not everyone will have the money we want, but 17 is a tough year. I mean, I showed you that spike down. We had to come up with $4.6 billion, so we protected some groups, but we had to make some hard choices. The cruiser mod, that is a very difficult one. It will be painful. I'll see Congressman Forbes this week. I'm going over to see him, and then Secretary Sackler and I are testifying on Thursday, and we will be challenged on that one. But like I said, my issue is it's an asset I want with an unknown future. And if they would lift the BCA law and promise us money, I'd probably be able to say we could keep them. But our real concern is, what are we building for ships in the future? Congressional action, generally been very positive. I will tell you, Congress understands that part of Article 1 of the Constitution says you can raise an army, but you will build and maintain a Navy. Sorry, maintain a Navy. They get it, especially in the Senate Appropriations Committee, Defense Subcommittee, and House Appropriations Committee, Defense Subcommittee, the HAC-D and SAC-D, you've heard the terms. They really do understand the Navy. They are, in many cases, able to provide for us and significant items. They bought that ESB. There's $646 million came in to build that ship right down here, BAE. That is headroom we have in 17 because they pulled it into 16 and bought that ship. That helped me with that bill. That helped me buy things I would have lost other than that. They're buying another fleet tug, and the fleet is short on tugs out there. And they put $1 billion towards the DDG-51, and they'll probably finish adding money again this summer. We'll have another DDG out of it. So Congress does understand. And when they come out and visit the companies, especially to the sailors out here, when you have congressional delegations on your ship, it's important to show them. They want to see who you are. They want to see how you love the Navy. They want to see your job, and they don't want any nonsense. They just want to know what's really going on. But realize is everything you say or do is reflected back again. Every one of those years on those orange spikes would have been a worse spike down and not a spike a high if it wasn't for the Appropriations Committee. We have to continue to reach out. They understand what the Navy is, and they understand we work with the Marine Corps, and we go as a team everywhere. The phrase over there I learned in Korea was, we go together. And that's even more than us with the Koreans and with the Japanese, is we go with our Marine Corps. We go together for everywhere. Next slide. So, I'm not going to steal all the thunder from Jan Ty and her fabulous team and Twig Branch, but this is an area, electromagnetic warfare and cyber innovations. I will tell you, this is one that keeps a lot of people up at night. When I was a junior officer, even through my beginning of my CO tour, a lot of things were all self-connected. We started building this idea of power systems and remote monitoring, but it wasn't the same level of connectivity. But in a matter of a year and a half, I went from having email on board, but nothing else, was riding as a deputy commander on Hartford. I got delivered an early bird. I could go on and surf the internet. Well, that also meant was if I could surf the internet from a submarine, which I couldn't do in 1998. In fact, I was the first in 1996. I had the first SHF antenna on a submarine. We went up and we did a test with a NASA connectivity, and we just connected with a dish. It was the first dish on a submarine, and we sent back, I don't know how many terabytes of data back and forth. It was just a series of numbers run through a supercomputer to prove they were all right. We actually transmitted more data in a 50-minute session logged onto a satellite than if you stacked up every piece of paper ever created in the history of the submarine force. Every message sent was transmitted faster in that one 50-minute session on board, and that was in 1996. By 1999, I am on the internet on board the Hartford downloading things and looking at things. An amazing change. Well, that also means we opened up our door. I'm back to Jan Ty defending our points. If I could get off the boat, someone can get back on my submarine, which never happened before. We have been insulated from that. But now we see it across the board. And now we jump ahead 15, 16 years later, everything we do. Everyone's on board on it. Everyone's getting data. Our systems talk back. We don't even necessarily know they're doing it. Ships have to go to MCON to actually shut down. Otherwise, their gas turbines are reporting back to Crane, Indiana. Why? Because we said, hey, gas turbines, why have all these gas turbine techs taking 1,000 pieces of data points on board? It's vibration analysis. I put 4 probes on board, a radio connection in the radio room. I will have my Naval Surface Warfare Center monitor all my gas turbines. Well, that's very interesting until someone get back on board and shut down your gas turbines. We have to find those issues out there. We are working and supporting, and that's what Jan Ty and the team are, is those defenses. We are, many cases, more open than we think we are. We need to run all those down. We need to rebuild some of our systems to be able to take that on board. And it's emerging of electromagnetic warfare was, how do you deliver that package? Some cases, it doesn't have to be over a wire anymore. Many cases, it can be injected in you, and that's a concern, because there are, as George Costanza would say in Seinfeld, worlds are colliding, right? As worlds are colliding, and that's what we have going on. The world of electromagnetic warfare and jamming and cyber attacks are all connected. And it's emphasized by even the things we do to make it better. When you think about when you go out to a factory, and I visit like radar, and how do I make a radar better, or a face of an antenna, I actually put remote signal processing on the face of it, such that it can actually digitize it there and bring it back faster. Well, it also means I have put a digital processor on my antenna. So many cases, if I go on board with a wave of a radar that's masked, I might be able to actually jimmy with that. And so our own ability to do stuff remotely and bring it on with electronic bottles is opening a door to us and ourselves. We have to think through what we're doing on that case, because how do I get teraflops of data processing? I have to be able to do rapid processing with supercomputers, but I also want to do remote data handling. The moment you say remote data handling, you are opening a door up on yourselves unless you are smart about it. It also means but most of our attacks come from people not doing things properly. It is the day-to-day watchstanding, the spaces on board, the PMS done by our petty officers. Do you secure the system properly? I'm right back to that innovation and that the CNO challenge you. Do your job right, make the Navy better every day, which means everyone who does that has to be there. And we've started now with 10th Fleet N2 and 6 cyber safe. Well, those of us submariners understand subsafe. Everyone on board a submarine does subsafe. Yeah, the nukes and the A-gangers actually do QA material, and they actually, you have to put on the proper bolt, and the officers have to go over the QA package. But everyone on board does subsafe rig for dive. Everyone knows A-gangers and nukes can't leave their parts on the deck. You could be a junior cook on board, you know the right answer for that. That's what we're asking about in cybersafe, is everyone in the Navy, every person on a contractor, civilian, or military, or marine riding, has to be realized you have to be you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And we need everyone to toe that line. It comes back to personal initiative and innovation, but this is a dangerous road for us. We need to be able to exploit others and protect ourselves. So across the top, we invested in Hawkeye. We had to cut one airplane. We're investing in the follow-on of their airborne refueling and investing in their radar. We're investing in the quick reaction capability in our P-8s, MQ-8 Tritons. Where can we go out and surveil out in the world? Electronic warfare. As a result of the ad from the money we got back from OSD, 18 more Sea-Whips. That is an advanced capability to detect the enemy, because right now some of our missiles coming from our enemies are not detectable with the Slick 32. The Slick 32 is so old that when Joe Mulloy was Ensign J.G. Mulloy, the Slick 32 was considered new and high-end at that time. It is still the same thing out there on the edges of our ships. We need to move to the next version of that. Why? Because it comes with the ability to sense new weapon systems, and on the version Sea-Whip 3, it actually has the ability to go back for an electronic attack back at the other end. We have to have those. We're buying 18 more. The SSEs, the signal exploitation, we need those. N2 and 6 was smart. They came up with the TCS system as well. We're buying 41 of those to get our ships going with a 3-rack modern panel. Next-gen jammer, we need that to be able to follow on to defend ourselves out there. And the bottom line across the board, PB-17 is investing in near real-time cyber situational awareness, is reducing our cyber surface attack by reducing and controlling our connections. We're installing sensors and control points, once again, across those points to know when someone's inside our network or someone's probing our network. And then we also need to take care of our 2 critical areas. I talked before about nuclear command and control, NC3, and precision navigation and timing are areas that we made investments in. We need to be able to take that fine data line and also make sure we know where we're at. Next slide. So I want to open the time for some questions here. But I will tell you is we cannot wallow in our fears and our concerns. It is a brave and new dangerous world. But we are the right people to stand up and move ahead. We have the smarts in this room. We have the smarts in the fleet. We have these outstanding petty officers with us. We got Ensign Grabowski. I got Ensign Roach. I assure you got a million other kids I see at my house where my other son is midshipman. They are our future. We need to have them engaged and out operating and challenge them because they are an amazing group of millennials. They think differently, but they will help us move on. But we need to be able to maintain our Navy and move ahead and be able to have them have a place to operate in. And we need our companies and our corporations here, and thank all of you for supporting this, to keep developing that technology just so we can. What do I worry about? I worry about the economy staying good. I mentioned at breakfast was, I don't have a lot of investments. I've been in the Navy for a long time. My wife tells me that someday I will retire and support her in the lifestyle she will become accustomed to. But right now, I do worry about the stock market, and I worry about what's the yield on 10-year Treasury bonds. Not because it affects me, because it affects the money I will get. Because the Budget Control Act, those dollar limits set by Congress, approved by the President, are not inflation indexed. It says the money DOD gets in 2019 is a fixed number. It doesn't matter if inflation takes off and bond markets go crazy or not. And what does that mean to us, though, is the cost of everything we do will go up. So I relish in right now the 10-year bond is relatively flat. I relish the stock market. They've had a 2-day recovery. We'll see if it keeps going. I'm concerned about that. But it's important the national economy keep going because we have this law till 21. We are in a budget-limited strategy. So I worry about that. Are we portraying to the world we are the right keeper of this one? You think about your security feeling. The world feels security from the U.S. The world really feels a lot of security from the U.S. Navy and our Marine Corps team. We provide calmness around the world. Calmness is fed back to our economy. Economy comes back to us. It is full circle, and I'm concerned about where does that take us in the future. So I need everyone in this room thinking about what can I do to make the Navy better, make the Marine Corps integrate better, and maintain our economy going such that we can keep the circle going. And we still have to balance it out there. There is a concern. Admiral Mulloy pointed out before, was the single biggest threat to national security is our economy. That was a while ago, and it's gotten better, but we still have some challenges. And those of you who look at budget projections for that next fit-up means we may not be going the right way with deficits. It'll be a hard concern for this next president. It'll be an important election. In uniform, you better sign up and vote. And those in civilians, I already know you are, but think about that future because I do every day. So, once again, I'm so happy to be in San Diego. It brings back such fabulous memories for me of operating in the Navy when I was lieutenant commander and I had more of a life and more of a hair, and I wasn't stuck in the Pentagon all the time. But this is a great Navy town. It has been for a long time, and I'm just happy to be here with you for a little while. So thank you all very much. So I'd like to go ahead and I think we have time for a few questions, Admiral Daly.
Yes, we do.
I'm going to have one here. Spam.
Good afternoon, Joe. Jan Hamby.
Hey, Jan, how are we doing? Good
I'm
to see you.
doing well. It's good to see you, too. You know, this morning we heard Admiral Stavridis talk about the need to make better use of soft power. Mm-hmm. And in the panel that we had a little bit earlier, we heard a number of folks talking about how we actually execute the strategy. My question for you is whether or not there is a developing will among those folks who sit the 3-star programmers to actually invest in some of those soft power capabilities. And for me, that includes things like education of our mid-grade and senior leaders so that they can actually develop the strategy that the rest of us have to execute.
That provides, Jan, it's a great question. It provides a fair amount of tension in the group there, and OSD policy comes in, and P&R, they have to have that, and the service are like, what's the metric on the return from it? I also realize that is the education, that is important to think about the strategy. So, but there is, I mean, there are funds for that, but that does come up as a constant question is how do you, in a tight time, I can go back and do a campaign analysis of N81. I can figure out what weapons make a difference. I can run the same war game 1,000 times in a computer against the Russian or Chinese Navy and come up with an answer. Okay, now I put 10 lieutenant commanders at Naval War College or at National, and does that make a difference or not? You have to be intrinsic on it. But the people, the military value at the top of the CNO and others like that, they still come back that, hey, there's value in that one, and so does the Commodore, or the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So I would say there is still money for that, but it is hard in this tough time.
Thank you.
Admiral, Voice of America, Lee Liu here. I'm wondering whether you can tell us how your FY17 budget, Navy budget, reflects the Asia rebalance strategy. Thank you.
I would say is we're maintaining, and we did not change. I mean, we did not pull things back. We are still putting ships forward into Japan. We are still going to put our 4 LCS in Singapore. Across the board, there was no major initiative to put something new. But in a world of losing $4 billion, we didn't pull anything back. So, as my Air Force friends say, flat is the new up. So that's even more than up, that we didn't retract anywhere. We're still building in Guam. We're still working with our Japanese allies to expand down there. So I would say is that across the board, the other portion, we are developing those things necessary to operate in the East Sea, the South China Sea, operate around the area of Korea, and work with our Japanese allies. So I would say is the second, what I'd call the second differential of those investments are everything I showed you in terms of weapons and electronics. You know, when I look at that, I don't need to have a lot of exotic stuff to deal with the bottom half of that 5 challenges, right? ISIS, I mean, I have to have reliable systems that deliver accurate weapons. Iran, I worry about counterproliferation, but once again there. North Korea's probably not going to require high-end scientific power. But dealing with those top 2 countries, which are a threat, and one of them lives right there on that boundary, we are making significant investments to really act as a deterrent. I mean, that's the whole point. We believe in this period of time, by working as a group, we can hold things at bay. That's why we've made investments on the next version of these weapons, so that people can see that we're making that necessary ability to be able to deal with the challenge of the future, and in many cases taking a risk on the current weapons. Thank you. Sir.
Thank you, Admiral, for taking another question from me. How do we offset China's 3 warfares policy, their ability to use psychological, media, and law warfare to accomplish all of their objectives without raising the threshold of actual war?
Well, that comes back to being the total concept of government. It's probably a great question for Admiral Stavridis, too, is that you have to think this one ahead and realize, make sure you're playing checkers and they're playing chess or go. What does that mean to where we operate? What do we do when we do FONs? And think through that next level of what's happening. That requires really to pull it together. And that's one thing I think PACOM talked about is, hey, what do we have? What do we have now about with UCOM has developed a new plan they have to have over there for what they're dealing with. It requires an effort to stand back and think about it. So there is an important, as Admiral Hamby mentioned, was a level beyond the resourcing to thinking about how do you pull it all together. And that is the real purpose of the Joint Staff and OSD, to help the combatant commanders pull it together. I have to resource to what are all the various plans we have out there that I can take action on. We have to resource about what do I have to support for contingency operations. But we don't really require a lot of resourcing for those. We require us to think through what actually is the level we want, that interagency portion. What do we want Treasury to do? What's going to happen with the cyber stuff? We've never actually finished this whole OPM investigation. Everyone in this room probably got a letter from somebody that everyone has your data right now. I mean, at all levels. Both my sons and my wife and I got a letter. I mean, all my data's out there. Everyone in this room probably has one. We've never actually held anyone accountable for that. That's not a money thing. That's actually a government focus item that we need to have going ahead, is what is the deterrent for people doing that? And whichever country it was behind that one. So that's a great question, but it requires a discussion I hope will come up with this next administration, is what will be our action plans to deal with the world around us in that soft area.
Thank you, Admiral. One of the panelists brought up earlier.
Oh, one more question. I'm sorry, please.
Admiral Tyson mentioned that she fears most the drones that are under $1,000. And when I look at the DoD's biggest programs, a lot of them are the flagship models. You look at like the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, and you look at the DDG-1000s. They're the flagship, very expensive thing. What is the DoD doing to focus on the cheaper alternative?
I don't have the specific programs. I see almost every week, Admiral Davidson sends an update to the CNO about what he's tracking for small drones. And in terms of the real concern starts with swift land, swift pack for these small drones flying over our nuclear weapons areas. But it's expanded upon that. I will tell you, a sophisticated radar will not pick up a drone going under 80 miles an hour typically. It'll pick it up, it'll detect it, it'll drop it again. We're having to work on the thresholds of those, because otherwise it's not considered a real threat because it's not moving that fast. So we are working at other items. And so those specifics are, I'm not sure, there is no massive program for it, but I know he is working right now for ATFP concerns about small drones and detecting them in an area. What does that mean for us? Because they are a concern in terms of what they get for surveillance, what could they carry on board. And we saw one of them just ran into, the Empire State Building the other day. I mean, you got, a lot of these are people just hobbyists, other people flying over, people are being accused, and someone shot one down, and then they was being accused of, why do you do it? He said, well, they're peeping in my windows, I got young daughters. I mean, whether the person really was, I don't know, but they are, yet they've sold, I think, what did the number go up by 1,000% here for this last holidays of people purchasing them. Most of them are not malevolent actors, but we do have to have a consideration of it. But I do know FFC is looking at that, and they're starting with SwiftPack and SwiftLant right now about protecting our nuclear weapons areas, and we'll expand that across what we have to do. And we did add, and that'd be the next level, we added 1,600 people, 800 military, 800 civilians on all of our bases for security, such that we can actually maintain security and train them to be able to go. It's a significant investment of more than $100 million over the fit-up just to pay for those people. But then the next level is give them the tools like that. So, well, thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and listening, and it's been wonderful being here in San Diego, and I just can't wait to come back again sometime and get out of the Pentagon. Thank you all very much.
Well, Admiral, thank you very much. That was great insights and comments. Boy, that was a lot of information put out in a very short period of time. And I'm sure our industry partners are out there eager to help you as you work through the challenge you've got. The other thing I thought was great guidance that you gave when you get these VIPs, the congressmen and the representatives coming out from Washington. Boy, the best face you can put forward certainly puts a favorable light on the Navy, the Marine Corps, and our Coast Guardsmen as we go forward. On behalf of the FCA and the Naval Institute, I'd like to present this book to you. It's got an FCA bookmark in it, but it's certainly done an appreciation for the great presentation you've done for us today. Thank you very much, Admiral.
Thank you, General. Appreciate it very much. Oh, outstanding.